Number 10. Bradley Robert Dawson. Newlywed Krista Chen was found beaten to death at an exclusive resort in Fiji just days after getting married in early 2022. The 36-year-old pharmacist met her husband, 38-year-old Bradley Robert Dawson, just 3 months earlier. They tied the knot after a whirlwind romance and went on their honeymoon at the upscale $3,500 per night Turtle Island Resort, where they stayed in a suite paid for by Chen's parents. The last night Krista was seen alive, witnesses recalled seeing the couple arguing and drinking heavily. Chen was allegedly angry with Dawson for flirting and dancing with other women at the resort. When they retired to their suite, the noise continued for some time before suddenly going silent. A butler found her badly beaten body the next day, slumped between the small space between the room's toilet and the wall. Dawson was found with a few minor injuries at a secluded beach on a neighboring island, where authorities believe he planned to catch a boat to mainland Fiji before fleeing the country. He insisted that Chen's death was an accident, but authorities didn't believe him. They charged Dawson with murder, and he remains behind bars in Fiji, awaiting the next step in his case. Chen's parents said that if he's not held criminally liable, they plan to file a civil lawsuit against him for their daughter's death. Number 9. Todd Chance. On August 25, 2013, the slain body of 45-year-old truck driver Todd Chance was found in an orchard in Bakersfield, California. Someone had shot him twice in the chest at point-blank range, leaving his 53-year-old wife, Leslie, a widow. Police found Todd's car abandoned and unlocked at an intersection roughly 20 miles, 32 kilometers from where his body was discovered. Inside the vehicle, they recovered a gun belonging to Todd and Leslie. It was starting to seem like the car was staged as part of an elaborate attempt to throw investigators off. Detectives learned that Leslie had attended a CSI convention in Las Vegas months before Todd's murder, leading them to believe that she used what she learned to plan the crime. She denied having any involvement in her husband's death, but police only discovered more reasons to suspect her, enough to charge her with first-degree murder. They found flirtatious text messages between Todd and his ex-fiancée from before he married Leslie, and wondered if Leslie had discovered the correspondence. The other woman testified in court that Todd had reached out to her, but Leslie's defense team argued that their client had no clue about the affair. Regardless of her motives, she faced a mountain of evidence against her. She was seen with Todd hours before he was killed and made numerous life insurance claims afterwards. The FBI disproved her alibi, and she got an even bigger reality check when a jury found her guilty of murder. After failing to pull off the perfect crime, Leslie was sentenced to life in prison. Number 8. Marty Malone. Stephen Verwort was a twice-divorced single dad who started over after moving to Bothell, Washington to work as a telecommunications supervisor during the 90s. He didn't know anyone in the area before moving there and had no known enemies to speak of, yet he was found murdered in his trailer home in 1997. During the investigation, detectives questioned Verwort's second ex-wife, Marty Malone, who was living in Tucson at the time. She showed an obvious attraction to one particularly handsome Bothell detective named Ed Hopkins. He cracked the case by convincing the smitten suspect that he was on her side and that he was capable of making anything bad she may have done go away. Malone told Hopkins that she had hired a man named Jonathan Curtis to murder Verwort so she could collect on his $150,000 life insurance policy that she happened to be the beneficiary of. She offered Hopkins a cut of the payout to kill Curtis and to make other evidence disappear. Little did she know, all of her conversations with the detective were recorded and under surveillance. When Malone met with Hopkins to discuss what she thought were the final details of the cover-up and their future plans together, they were swarmed by police. She was shocked to realize that she had fallen for what many would call the most obvious undercover plot imaginable. Curtis was convicted of first-degree murder and received a life sentence. Malone admitted to the murder-for-hire plot and was sentenced to 23 years behind bars in exchange for her testimony against Curtis. Number 7. Delaney Brennan and Jack Elliott. Jack Elliott was just 19 years old when he went boating with some friends in Traverse Lake near Austin, Texas, and never returned. The college freshman and 11 others were drinking and wakeboarding near the famous Devil's Cove party area when Elliott suddenly tumbled off the boat and into the water. The young man's fling, Delaney Brennan, had playfully shoved him while the two were flirting, causing him to fall to his death, hitting the propeller along the way. It was nighttime by then, and nobody could see him in their pitch-dark surroundings. Terrified of getting in trouble with the law, the teens erupted into hysteria and then hatched a cover-up story to give to the police about Jack's disappearance. They dumped all of their booze off the boat and agreed to feign ignorance about their friend's death. Their different versions of the story didn't match up, leaving detectives and Jack's family wondering what really happened that night. Jack's remains were found 10 days after he went missing, but it didn't bring the answers that his loved ones and law enforcement were hoping for. One witness, Carly Martin, grew so tired of the lies that she traveled to Jack's parents' home in California to tell them the truth. Several others eventually admitted that Delaney had pushed Jack, although she never meant for him to land in the water and drown. In late 2021, more than 2 years after Jack's death, a grand jury indicted several of the teens who participated in the cover-up on various charges. Delaney Brennan faces a felony charge of tampering with evidence by aiding in the deletion of a cell phone video. If convicted, she could be sentenced up to 10 years behind bars and hit with a $10,000 fine. 5 others were charged with different crimes for their role in the incident, including serving alcohol to minors, tampering with evidence, perjury, and giving false information to a police officer. Number 6. Joseph Treviso. Joseph Treviso was a high-functioning 30-year-old man with special needs, but due to his mental restrictions, he had the mind of a 15-year-old boy. To gain some life skills, he began working at a thrift store in Mesa, Arizona, owned by a charity called Community Provider Enrichment Services. However, instead of leading Treviso toward a better life, the job brought him to his death. In May 2018, his supervisor, Jesse Dakins, viciously stabbed him to death for allegedly flirting with his girlfriend. Treviso's mother, Rachel Perez, told the East Valley Tribune that her son saw Dakins as a friend and someone who accepted him as a normal person. According to court documents, Dakins and his girlfriend, Tiffany Warren, regularly persuaded Treviso to use methamphetamine with them. Shortly before he was murdered, the couple got high for several weeks straight, and at some point, Dakins became jealous of Warren's close friendship with the victim. Suspicious that the two were having an affair, Dakins stabbed Treviso at least 27 times. Dakins and Warren then dumped the victim's body in the woods about 90 minutes away and attempted to clean up the murder scene. They confessed when confronted by police. Warren was found guilty of first-degree hindering prosecution, and Dakins was convicted of second-degree murder and manslaughter. He was sentenced to life in prison. In a civil suit, Treviso's mother accused the company her son and his killer worked for of turning a blind eye to the alleged abuse that led up to her son's death. The lawsuit also claims that Warren and Dakins persuaded Joseph to use drugs with them, buy them drugs, and help them pay their rent. Other staff members allegedly knew of Dakins' shady behavior, but did nothing about it. Perez said that she wanted to see justice for her son and changes to protect vulnerable populations from being victimized like Treviso was. Number 5. Wade Edward Smith and James Preston Allen Vaughn. Buddies Wade Edward Smith and James Preston Allen Vaughn were regular customers at a gas station in Melville, Louisiana, where they regularly flirted with a young woman who worked there. Concerned that the flirting would cause problems between the men and her boyfriend, 18-year-old Jaden Michael Ardoin, the woman asked Vaughn and Smith to dial down the charm, and they agreed. Ardoin saw the men inside the store shortly thereafter and became angry. Later that night, Smith and Vaughn drove past Ardoin on the highway, and the chase ensued. At some point, Ardoin began shooting at the pair from behind, striking Smith with a bullet. Vaughn attempted to take control of the wheel, but the vehicle crashed into a tree and caught fire. A bystander helped Vaughn out of the car, but Smith died from his injuries. Police connected Ardoin to the crime using surveillance footage and other evidence, and charged him with first-degree murder and attempted first-degree murder. Number 4. Barry Washington Jr. 22-year-old Barry Washington Jr. was standing outside a nightclub in Bend, Oregon in late 2021 when he spotted a young woman and politely complimented her. She told him that she was flattered, but had a boyfriend. The woman's partner, 27-year-old Ian Cranston, confronted Washington, and tensions quickly escalated from words to violence. After throwing a few punches, the fight stopped, but that wasn't the end of it. Cranston then pulled a gun from his waistband and fatally shot Washington. He was charged with second-degree murder, first and second-degree manslaughter, first-degree assault, and 2 counts of unlawful use of a weapon. Washington was African American, leading Deschutes County District Attorney John Hummel to suggest that the homicide has overtones of the dark history of black men being murdered for speaking to white women. Hummel failed to find enough evidence to charge the defendant with a bias crime, but said that he believed Washington would not be dead if he were not black. Cranston's attorney argued that his client shot Washington in self-defense after being hit in the face twice. However, the judge overseeing the case denied the defendant's motion for bail and ordered for Cranston to remain behind bars until his trial. Number 3. Ashley MacArthur. 33-year-old police officer Taylor Wright vanished in Pensacola, Florida in 2017. Detectives questioned her best friend, former crime scene technician Ashley MacArthur, after identifying her as the last known person to see Taylor alive. During the first of 2 interviews, MacArthur took a flirtatious and playful tone with investigators. She was much more serious during the second interview, indicating that perhaps she knew that it was only a matter of time before she was held accountable for murdering Taylor. After all, no amount of charm could conceal the obvious evidence pointing toward her involvement, including the discovery that Taylor had given MacArthur $34,000 for safekeeping shortly before she disappeared. Police found Taylor's body buried on property owned by MacArthur's aunt and charged the suspect with first-degree premeditated murder. A jury convicted her of the crime, and she received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. MacArthur maintained her innocence and appealed her case, but a court upheld her conviction. At this point, it's safe to say that she'll never see freedom again, no matter what strategy she tries. Number 2. Bianca Beaumont. 34-year-old Bianca Beaumont was at a booze and drug-fueled party in Newport, Wales in early 2021 when her friend, 32-year-old Carly Tuft, allegedly punched and disfigured her in a jealous rage. Tuft accused Beaumont of flirting with her boyfriend and left her with serious injuries that required medical treatment. When Beaumont tried leaving the apartment to go to the hospital, the boyfriend, John Jackson, threatened to murder her young children if she reported the assault to law enforcement. He told her to say that she had been attacked on the street. Just days later, the couple attended Sunday dinner at Beaumont's mother's house and acted like nothing had happened. However, the attack left Beaumont struggling with both emotional trauma and physical scars, including slash marks on her face. Despite the warning not to snitch, she reported the incident to police, and both Jackson and Tuft were arrested. Jackson told the judge that he threatened Beaumont because he was afraid of his girlfriend and was compelled to go along with the situation. The judge called him a coward and sentenced him to 4 years in prison for making threats to kill. Tuft was convicted of wounding with intent and received a 6.5-year sentence. Number 1. Mac Bond. 58-year-old Mac Bond was a respected 21-year veteran of the Memphis Fire Department. He was off duty one day in 2020 when he allegedly approached a couple who were sitting in a rented car at a public park. They claim that he repeatedly asked them to have intercourse. 25-year-old Carlton Wells, who was in the vehicle with his girlfriend Danielle Mack, fatally shot Bond at the scene. The couple then returned their rental car to the agency, claiming it had transmission problems. It's unclear what was actually said during the confrontation, but that's the story Wells told after he was identified as the suspect in surveillance footage. He admitted to shooting Bond, claiming that the firefighter's repeated come-ons made him feel uncomfortable and scared. Wells was charged with second-degree murder and being a felon in possession of a handgun, and Mack faced a tampering with evidence charge. It's unclear where the case currently stands, but it's unfortunate that Wells resorted to killing Bond rather than simply driving away. Would you rather catch your partner exchanging flirtatious text messages with your best friend, or spend an entire year isolated in a remote cabin by yourself? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.